welcome to the Community Development Block Grant 2022 Application Guideline Webinar Series. Today is our third webinar, and it consists of an AmpliFund application walkthrough. Today, joining me, I have Aaron Boucher, Amber Helmick, Gina Deuce, Rebecca Schiedemann, Steve Charleston, and Tom Stevens. I will be leading primarily the majority of this presentation, but feel free to ask any questions that you may have throughout the presentation. We have muted everyone upon entry, but if you want to take a moment to double check that your microphone is red and has a line through it and looks like the image on the PowerPoint screen, just to make sure you are muted, that would be great. If you do have questions, feel free to send a message to the host and the panelists by clicking on the chat icon, and you can type in your message there. And once we have pauses in our presentation, we'll make sure to address those throughout the presentation. We do not have a DED support staff member on here, so we might not be able to answer all of your technical questions, but if we don't have an answer for you during the presentation, we'll make sure to get back to you guys following this week's presentation. Today's agenda, we're going to talk about resources, where to find all of this information, user account setup, additional users, and the structure of the CDBG application within AmpliFund. So we're going to talk a little bit about the project information, the application forms, and the budget. Before we begin, I wanted to go over some best practices. So if you are an individual who will be working on application preparation, please first determine if the local unit of government has a user account within AmpliFund. AmpliFund is a fairly new system. We have had it for the past 3 years now. And recently, back in August of 2021, we migrated a lot of data over into the system. So there could be additional accounts that you may not be aware of. So first, check with the local unit of government representative to see if they have an AmpliFund user account. If they say no, please contact DED.support@nebraska.gov to see if there is already an active local unit of government DED AmpliFund account on record. We don't want a duplicate account to be created by mistake. So please go through that structure. And if you are checking in to see if you have, with DED.support, go ahead and CC Gina Deuce. We're trying to make sure that everything is answered timely, and she'll be kind of keeping track to see if everyone's getting a response back fairly quickly on anything regarding the CDBG applications. Step 2, you want to determine who is submitting the CDBG application. So if that individual is not a member of the local unit of government's user account, the local unit of government will need to add them as a user. So something for us to take into account is whoever is submitting the application within AmpliFund, they need to be underneath the login credentials associated with a local unit of government. Okay. So that ends our PowerPoint slides. I will now bring over some of our resources. Okay, so before we begin, I know we have a couple new users that are thinking about applying for CDBG funds this year, so we're going to kind of walk you through from ground zero all the way into the system. So if you are brand new and you're wanting to know more information, we'll go into programs, click community, scroll down to community development block grant, and all of our information regarding our CDBG applications are on this page. So if you want to quickly navigate to the 2022 application guidelines, you can click here on the announcement, and it'll jump you automatically down to application guidelines. You'll have to click on the secondary tab here that says application guidelines. All of our guidelines here are located in the 2022 CDBG application guidelines, along with exhibit templates and guidance information. So if you have any questions, kind of start here. In addition, we also have a resource called a web page called AmpliFund. So this will take you to some how-to guides, quick links. For the purpose of this presentation, and you're still trying to figure out if your local unit of government that you're preparing an application for CDBG funds has a user account, definitely start out with this general FAQ area. And you'll notice that there are these sub-tabs going on here. So you first want to focus on this application portal tab here. If you are awarded funds, you would then click on this sub-tab called Award Management, and you'll notice how this changes, and there's a lot more guidance documents going on there. But for purposes of application, always make sure you're on this first tab. Some of the forms that we wanted, guidance documents we wanted to highlight are external user guide, and then how to log in, and then registering for an applicant portal. So we'll kind of go from there. And then next up, if you scroll up, we do have quick links here. You can click on Community Development Block Grant. We did create a brief CDBG AmpliFund application guide, and it will look like this. And I'll try to follow along with the structure of today's presentation with these instructions. So if you want to have these handy next to you, feel free to have those up on another screen. I'll be flipping back and forth between them or making references to this. Okay, so we will, if we notice anything, if we're getting lots of questions regarding a certain area of the applications, we'll be updating these application guidance documents here, and we'll make sure to put a date. Always make sure you are looking at the most recent version of our guidance documents. We do update them periodically, so we try to denote that with a certain date at the end of the field. We don't have these because this is the first rendition on this one for 2022, but we'll moving forward. After our presentation webinar series concludes this week, we'll be adding our 2022 webinar series over here. So that will be another area for resources for you guys to check out. Okay, so next up, we will go back to CDBG webpage. You guys can also get there by using the quick redirect link of just typing in opportunity.nebraska.gov/CDBG, and it'll take you straight to this webpage. So wanted to also highlight where you can access and go into our AmpliFund applications. So you'll first scroll down and you'll notice that we have 3 open cycles remaining open for 2021 applications. So these will remain up here until about July 15th. But once that July 15th comes, they will be removed. If you are working on a 2022 application, keep scrolling down and make sure that you are here. You'll notice that there is an Apply Now button for those applications that are currently available. Right now we have downtown revitalization, planning, public works facilities, infrastructure currently available for you to click into and apply. You'll notice that our open cycle grants do not have that Apply Now button. That will be made available on these opportunities come July 1. Steve, is there anything else I forgot to say that you want me to highlight before I transition into AmpliFund?
That should cover it, Rebecca.
Okay, cool. So we'll go ahead and click Apply Now for downtown revitalization. So I am currently not logged in, but we're going to try and apply. And so I am now currently logged in. You can tell that you're logged in because you usually see your name up here. This may look a little bit different for users that are not DED staff employees. So I urge you to review the guidance on AmpliFund external users, logging in, making sure that all comes together. So here you'll have a brief description of what is the 2022 CDBG Downtown Revitalization Program. And then who is your lead opportunity manager, Steve Charleston. We've made these available on June 13th, so anyone can start submitting applications now. We have an award ceiling of this project for $435, an award floor of $250,000. So that's the maximum CDBG dollars that you can request. This also tells you the date we're accepting applications and the last date that we are accepting applications. You'll notice that you have until 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time to submit these applications to us. So, but we strongly encourage everyone not to wait till the last minute in case there are some technology snafus going on and you need assistance. So try to have everything done a little bit earlier than 9:15. If you have any questions, you can email Steve. We also have his phone number there. And then if you want to be redirected to our webpage, you can click on this and it'll take you straight there. Let's see if I clicked on the wrong thing. Okay, for purposes of this, I'm going to switch into our tourism development, one that's not published yet. So application name, this is ground zero start. We would like you to enter the local unit government's name without the references of city of or village of. So let's pretend I am in the city of Red Cloud. And for my tourism development project, we are doing the Willa Cather Center. So we do have guidance on the application name within our instructions here. If you are applying for any of them, I did include examples of how to application names for any of the categories you are applying for funding. This helps us when we are downloading materials from your application. They come down with these file names, and so it's a little bit easier for us to identify which project we're reviewing quickly and ensure that all the components are there. So we would appreciate it if you guys follow a similar naming structure going on here. Okay, so we will request our dollar amount. This will be $300,000 we are requesting. Our match contribution for tourism development is 25%. And Gina, I'm going to have you do math. What is 300,000 times 0.25? $75,000 is what we are doing match requirement. You'll notice that this primary contact information autofills by whoever is the user completing this. So I am currently logged in. This is my information. You'll notice that there are asterisk signs right here. That means it's a required field. So you need to have something completed in there to ensure that you are able to save this form and mark it as complete. So make sure everything's filled out and it's correct. If you did see an issue, this is auto-populated from my user credentials. Maybe, as you can see, I need to update my address line. I'm no longer at 301 Centennial Mall South. I can immediately update it here and put our Fallbrook location, or I can go into my user account and update my user credentials with my address line information. So since everything is looking good here, we're going to mark this as complete. One thing to note is that the dollar amount that you type in here and here are linked with your budget. So if you're finding that your numbers, you're getting hit with an error message, you might want to check here to make sure that these numbers line up with what you're trying to do in your budget. So I have marked this as complete. It is completely done. And if I want to ever come back in, I would then just change something on here. I can unclick this, and then I can make a change to be Holbrook, and then hit mark as complete. So it is saved. When you want to move to the next area of the application, you can click on the application forms. You'll see that since I marked the project information section as complete, I get these lovely check signs showing where I'm at with the project. So before we begin on this project here, I recommend taking a look at your exhibits that we talked about yesterday and determining which ones apply to you for your project, because you'll notice that there is a status column here, and they're all marked as new. So every single one of these will need to be indicated as complete in order for you to submit your full application. So for example, for this project, we're going to go into Exhibit E3. We are not meeting the national objective of LMC with this project. So I already know from the very beginning, I'm going to hit this does not apply to my project. So I can shrink that list down so I know which ones to truly focus on. So you'll mark as complete. And if you can't see, there's a lovely circle loading button going on here. And we'll navigate to the next page as soon as it's done loading. Okay, so I get a lovely reminder there regarding this. So you can either always click back into here to review what other forms you have to do. You'll see that should have marked it as complete. I apologize. I might have skipped a step. As we're waiting, I do see we have a question regarding is match required for the entire grant or just the project cost and not general admin construction management. Match is required based off of each of the opportunity identified in the application guidelines. So for today's example, I gave a very basic one. However, it's just based off of project cost. So whatever your CDBG project's costs are for the grant, that is what needs to be matched against. Steve, do you want to add any clarification regarding that?
I can.
Okay. So
the match is against the CDBG project amount, which does not include admin and construction management.
Thank
Is that
you.
what you said?
You know, I could have said it. I'm not entirely sure.
No, I think that's what you said. So in some cases, the match depends upon the categories, the number of categories that are within the opportunity. So if you have questions about how you're matching and the funds used to match, and also if it's in kind, as we talked about in the prior sessions, please talk to the program manager for that opportunity. And that would be helpful prior to when you enter that into the actual application.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you everyone for your patience. So as you can see, my E3 form now indicates complete in the system. So definitely take a look at which application exhibits apply to your program and kind of do a review and mark the ones that are complete that don't apply. So then you can just focus on that. So part 1 information. This part 1 and part 2 are standardized across all of the CDBG opportunities. So we did not make these unique to the opportunity, so that's why there are questions that may not be applicable to those opportunities. So just keep that in mind. So we did provide you guidance here, name of applicant of the local unit of government. Please don't include the city of, when we export information from this, we want to do it alphabetically, and when you put city of or village of, it kind of screws up with the layout of alphabetical. So our project is Red Cloud today, and that, I do not remember if it is a second-class city or a first-class city, but I'm going to go with second-class for today's example. Employee identification number. This is a required field. This is for the city of Red Cloud. You would type in that number. So the address line. And you would indicate the state. So Nebraska is all the way up the top to help you guys with that. And I am making up a zip code. The first name of the authorizer is, will be Nancy Drew is our person, and they are the mayor of the city of Red Cloud. Does the address line need to go respond to a physical address or with a PO box? Ideally, the address line 1 would be the street address, and then if there is a PO box, please place that in address line 2. That will help us to determine how that mail needs to go to you guys. So appreciate that clarification. And we did receive a question, and Steve, you might know the answer to this, or Aaron. Does the physical address need to match what is in sam.gov? I'll let you guys tell me if you have the answer to that, otherwise I'll give you my answer.
Go ahead, Rebecca. You can answer it. I don't know. I haven't checked physical addresses against the ones that are actually registered in sam.gov.
Normally, they should be the same of what's in sam.gov. If you have a situation where it's different, let us know. But normally, when they're registering in sam.gov, it should be their physical address for that community. So I think those are all the questions we received to this point. Next up, we're going to talk about local contact. So you'll notice that part 1 is all of our contact information of the folks that want to be receive information regarding the status of this application, or who could potentially provide us clarification information on anything within the application. So our local contact is going to be Sherlock Holmes. And he is the clerk today. And his phone number, we're going to say 308. So all these fields with red do need to be answered. If I do have anything missing in them, they come up, this field is required. It won't let you mark this section of the application as complete unless it is all filled out. So application preparer. So the first question here is talking about, is the application preparer a employee of the local unit of government, or are they part of a different organization? So if they're an employee of the local unit of government, you would indicate no, and then you would complete their information here of what their contact and phone number, email address. Let's say they are not an employee of the local unit of government. Maybe they are a consultant that was hired. You'll indicate yes, and then you would identify the type of consultant that they are or organization. So we'll say economic development district. If you did say other, we do ask that you identify what other type of preparer they are. So please complete that. And we'll move down to the address. And then we have another additional contact information. So oftentimes we have other organizations, maybe there is an economic development contact within your community that also wants to be made aware of the status of the application, or maybe you partnered with a nonprofit or for-profit business that wants to be made aware. This is where that information should go. So if there is someone additional that needs to be made aware, we'll indicate yes, and then complete the following fields. If there is not, you can just indicate no, and then hit save and continue. We don't have everything completed, so we're going to just hit save and continue. We go to the next part of our application. And we'll just be very patient. Okay, so we're now on to part 2. Again, this is standard with every single CDBG opportunity. So we did not make this specific to any one opportunity. So very general information. So the first thing that comes up is tell us about the type of applicant that you are. Are you applying individually or jointly? We have some application opportunities that you are only able to apply individually. That is within the Downtown Revitalization Grant Program. Then we have other ones that you can apply jointly, and that could be with Public Works or planning. If you are completing a downtown revitalization application, you can indicate individual and move on to the next question, but perhaps you are partnering with other local units of government. Then you would indicate joint. You would identify that other local government that is also partnering with you on this project. So I'm trying to think of another community that's near Red Cloud. Where? I think I might be spelling it wrong. Thank you. You're also hearing Gina on the phone with me. We would also need to see the executed written agreement within the joint local government participating in this project. There could be a point in time, maybe you don't have that fully executed at time of application. We do at least need to see the written agreement that is under development between both local governments. Steve, we talked about this a little bit on Monday. Do you want to add anything more about written agreements and what all needs to be identified?
In terms of an agreement on a joint agreement?
Yeah.
Well, you would want to identify, first of all, who the lead applicant is so that you would know which community is going to be that actual direct applicant in the program. And then you would want to identify the management responsibilities with regards to who is doing what. And of course, you would also need support documentation that, as you would for an individual applicant, that they agreed, in other words, through the council or the board, to submit an application. Anything else you think of, Rebecca?
No, I think you covered it. Thank you for explaining that.
You're welcome.
Okay, so next up is our question, does this project involve a for-profit entity? So this could happen with our economic development or tourism development opportunities. You would indicate either yes or no. So this is where you would identify that for-profit entity's name and then their address information, and again, upload another item. We do need, whenever we're partnering with for-profit entities, we do need to see proof of Secretary of State registration that indicates that they are able to do business in the state of Nebraska. If you have questions regarding partnering with for-profit entities, feel free to reach out to Steve and Tom about any questions you may have. The nonprofit development organization, we primarily see this with economic development projects that have the potential of creating program income. So if you do have questions and you are wanting to submit an application with economic development, I highly encourage you to reach out to Tom Stevens to make sure you are completing everything correctly. We also needed a proof of Secretary of State documentation for the NDO and another executed written agreement between for-profit entity, NDO, and local unit of government. Next up is the question of, does this project involve a nonprofit entity? You would indicate yes or no. If yes, oftentimes we see this with tourism development projects, also with public works projects going on. If you are building a child care center, that seems to be, or a tourist attraction that is overseen by a nonprofit entity, this is where they usually are being completed. So again, we would need their contact information identified, and then also the proof of Secretary of State registration, and then a memorandum of understanding for a draft or final document, identifying roles and responsibilities, ensuring that everything is clear on that. I think we did get a question come in. Being a little bit bigger, yes. Hopefully that helps. Thank you for letting me know. So you are applying for a public works grant, and it is with the city of Red Cloud. They're doing street improvements. Most likely you are doing an individual application. There is no for-profit entity involved, and there is no nonprofit. So very simple questions to be answered. When you start partnering with other entities, you get more questions to answer. Okay, so next up is the Chief Elected Official template attachment. You are able to click on this link and it will download a file for us to open. So this form needs to be completed and is usually signed the same day as when the public hearing is held by that local unit of government. So it identifies the chief elected official, the name of the local unit of government, and then has them sign off here. Overall, this is important because it helps us know that the local unit of government is fully aware of the commitment that they are applying for and all the other information and regulations required of them. Steve, is there anything else you want to add? This form's been around for quite a bit of time.
No.
Okay. So you can click on that link, fill this out, and then once it's signed, we are looking for it to be signed either the day of the public hearing or after that public hearing. overall, you should not have it signed before you have your full application available and ready to present to the public. So, and then you can upload the file here. Okay, so we are don't have something to not everything is checked, so I'm just going to click Save and Continue. Okay, Part 3, every single CDBG opportunity has a Part 3. These are uniquely identified for each opportunity though. So you will notice that there are different Part 3s identified for each opportunity, and this correlates to the eligible priority activities identified by Nebraska that we are focusing on in those opportunities. So that can be found in Part 3 of the CDBG application guidelines based off of the opportunity that you are applying for. So each one of these you will need to either mark yes or no if your project includes this activity. One thing you'll notice is some of these activities have stated next to them supporting activity. We cannot fund a project where it is only identifying supporting activities. We need another activity also identified that does not have that label of supporting activity. So please keep that in mind. This project, all of these questions are required, so you'll need to go through and verify whether this applies to this project or does not apply to this project. So our project does not include acquisition of real property, so I'm indicating no. Our project does include a neighborhood facility, so I'm going to indicate yes. And we are wanting to do a cultural and heritage recreational site and facility, and we will be meeting national objectives. I'm going to, for purposes of this presentation, we'll do LMC, and it will identify our proposed units. So we are proposing to assist people with this project. For example, if we selected LMJ, we would be creating jobs for this or retaining jobs. SBA, we would select people, and then we would use the census data for the slum and blight on an area basis that best correlates with our local unit of government. So it could potentially be the entire community, or if it's a larger community, it could fall on a census tract. If you have questions, if you're trying to reach SBA and you're benefiting people, reach out to us. We want to make sure you have a good understanding of what your beneficiary type you will be assisting. This information does go into the federal system called IDIS, so that is one of the reasons why we are asking for it here. And then SBS, also people, and identifying that. So, okay, so we have people, and then here we are marking everything else with an answer. And we will have construction management. I initially made this LMC, so it is going to be LMC here and neighborhood facilities. So construction management is a supporting activity to help us complete our primary activity. And then previously up above, we indicated that we are assisting people. And we are going to mark as complete. Unfortunately, AmpliFund has a little bit of a loading time, so please be patient. It does normally save and give you that pop-up. So we are going to save and continue. Okay, before we navigate in there, I wanted to just show all of you guys how you can see which areas of the application are in progress and which ones are complete and which ones still need to be addressed. So you'll notice that part 1 we indicate is in progress, and that is not done because for us to submit the application, it will need to indicate complete. Same with part 2, in progress. One thing to warn you guys about, I recommend having one person be the lead on entering the information into AmpliFund. If you have more than one person entering information in AmpliFund at the same time, it could, one person's entries could override another person's entries. So you might do double work needing to verify those items. So keep that in mind to help you as you navigate within this system. So part 4 is project information. This correlates with all of our CDBG application guidelines questions, which are, I'm going to go back to our website, and they are within application guidelines. So if you don't want to work in the system right away, you can navigate to part 3, and all the questions for the application are located within 5.06 application criteria for that, and you'll see all of the questions listed there, and then also how we are ranking them. So you'll see this will be mirrored within the application within part 4 for our projects. So keep that in mind. We do include some conditional questions in here. So based off of whether you indicate yes or no, you may have additional questions come up. So please be aware of that. You can also download the application questions and work on this outside of the system. And then when you're ready, you can then come back in to add your answers and do a copy paste. Okay, so we do have the budget coming up next. And if you guys are following along with us, we are on page 9 of our application full guide. So if you are following along right now, we are on this document, page 9. So please keep that in mind as we are navigating through. So one thing to keep in mind is we are wanting a full comprehension of what you are planning to do with your project. So please have as much detail as possible regarding how you came up with your numbers. I believe on my very first page within AmpliFund, I indicated that $300,000 is what I was requesting for a grant funded amount, and $75,000 would be matched. So I need to know exactly how you guys came up with those figures. So please don't group all the expenses into a generic category line item called neighborhood facilities. We would like more information regarding that. So we are doing construction management. This is non-personnel construction management. My application guidelines indicate that I can do $8,000 within this, and this is full budgeted. So that will be purely grant funded. We also will be doing general administration and Steve, I don't recall how much general admin is in the tourism development, so I'm going to make up a figure called 25,000 and hope that that is right. Okay, so we also said neighborhood facilities. So for this, I am going to use being pretty generic right here, but I'm sure if you guys are working on a project, you'll have more detailed information of how you're coming up with your numbers. I am going to indicate that this is $50,000 for my lovely neighborhood facility, and grant funded, non-grant funded amount is a yes. We recommend that you select a dollar so you can have a little bit more control over how the rounding issue occurs. So I am planning on all of this being matched and zero of it actually being grant funded. So you can add a narrative if you feel like you need additional explanation of what is all involved in electrical work. For this example, in this training session, we're going to just leave it as is. And then you'll see how this is building up and helping you out. I do recommend building out your budget outside of AmpliFund, getting your numbers all finalized, and then coming in and doing this so you can ensure that everything is adding up correctly. If you notice that there are some number issues and you're just maybe you are using that percentage or it's not adding up correctly and you could do a comparison with your Excel document you created outside of the system, you can always highlight everything, copy and paste it into Microsoft Excel to kind of help you figure out where your number is going wrong in the system, if that helps you a little bit more. So you'll notice that right now I don't have completely $375,000 indicated here. I'm a little bit short. I only have $83,000. That this won't let me mark it as complete. I can only save and continue. So it won't let me mark as complete until I have the $375,000 identified in the line items. Erin, I know you look very closely at this with a lot of your projects. Do you want to provide us any guidance that you have seen in the past that has worked out well for us, for the department to review?
Well, you might want to, any engineering costs that might be associated or architectural would be helpful. But then sometimes you don't want to go into like the electrical work. You don't want to divide that into 8 different things that would all qualify as electrical work. And so it's kind of like you want to get specific, but not too specific, I guess, if that makes sense. but I always find it helpful for the architectural and engineering fees to be included there as well.
Yep, so that's one of the things that is a key item. There could be some items that you think are eligible within the CDBG grant program that you believe are eligible, but when we are reviewing, we find that they are not eligible per HUD guidance. So that's one of the reasons why it's very helpful for us to know how you're coming up with your numbers, especially if you want them to be used as match dollars amounts or the CDBG dollar amounts. I believe usually like engineering costs, sometimes we need a little bit more explanation on those. Steve, is there anything else you can kind of think of that's made us question, need more information from folks?
It depends on the project and how far you want to break those costs out. Because maybe in an economic development opportunity or a tourism one or a downtown, you may want to break down those costs. But as Aaron says, you want to be careful when you build that budget so that you're not tied in tight to those numbers too. So that's an issue when you get to drawdowns, although you'll be drawing it down based upon category. That's why, although in construction management, that's one item that's drawn separately. I don't have anything else, Rebecca.
Awesome, thank you. I'll take a look to see if we've received any questions via the chat, or sometimes folks sneak them in the Q&A. Not seeing any. Okay. So, cool. So if you are doing a project, we talked a little bit about this, that's highly complex, and you have other funding sources involved, and let's say you have some items that are not eligible CDBG dollars that you kind of want to help us figure out. So that would not be included if they're not eligible CDBG line items. They would not be included on this budget. However, in Exhibit Q, you would provide us kind of a breakdown of how those ineligible activities would be paid for using non-CDBG or related matching dollars. So please keep that in mind. I think that is primarily it. I know we have quite a few panelists on here. If you guys think I've missed anything, let me know. Otherwise, I'll move to the next area that I wanted to highlight. Okay, not seeing anyone. So as we are moving through this, we're hoping and needing check boxes on each item. And so we are able to submit. As you can see, I am missing some check boxes, and some of these are in progress right now. When I get to the submit page, it does give me warnings that I don't have everything done. So it's giving me this warning here, your budget has errors, and that requires your attention. The main error right there is that I do not have the full amount matching what I inputted into the project information. So I said $375,000 that project information. Currently, my budget only has $83,000 listed in it. Also, it gives me a warning that I'm not done with all the forms. Those all need to be completed. So this is very helpful. It also tells me what my project application is being called and it's being submitted to us. If you want, you can click review. You can also download your application to review your answers. Normally when I'm working in any system, I try to work outside of that system and then go have all my answers ready. So then it's just a copy and pasting my information into the other system. So keep that in mind. I think that helps you as you're trying to navigate within this area. So here it comes, I'm able to review my Nebraska Department of Economic Development application, and it will look like so. I will say my name, and this will help you guys as you are preparing your public hearing. And if you, the public need to review a copy of the application prior to it being submitted, this will have all of your answers. You can also save this and review this for data quality. You can save it also as a Word document, and then you can track changes if you wish to. Don't want, these are a lot of things. So that's how, if you're working with several people on a project on getting an application submitted in, I recommend downloading a version of it and then saving it as a Word document so then folks can see it and review it as such and see what all of your answers were. Works out well, so definitely recommend that. We also have our chief elected official template here. When you upload a completed version, it'll also, any uploads you do will also appear in this download. And then here's our budget also if you want to do that. I'm not seeing any questions come in. Let's see. So here is my budget. So if you wanted to take a look at what I have entered in, you can see what narrative I put in, so you didn't have to click into each one of those to see which ones have narrative. You can click on that to see everything. And then you can see the breakdown of what I called everything. So I'm not seeing any questions. So Steve and Aaron, do you guys have anything else to add?
No, I don't, Rebecca. It's a
Okay.
good explanation, especially on downloads.
Thank you. So since I don't have check marks on every single area here, I am going to flip back to our application guide. Once you hit submit, you will receive an email from us, and it will look similar to this. Whoever is listed on your primary contact information will receive the email, and then you'll also see this displayed on your screen when you go to, after you hit submit, and then you can download the application. Please download a copy of your application for your records to make sure that everything's lined up and all of your records are well kept. You can also review the status of your application. We will notify folks once we complete our scoring and our recommendation to our director and everything signed off there. We will denote that you usually receive the notice of approval first or notice of non-select, and then it's followed up with that with an AmpliFund. So normally you get 2 emails from us. One's a letter, and then the other one is a system automatic generation of an email that you would receive. Like I said, for project information, the person listed here will be the person who receives those automated responses from the system. So please keep that in mind if you're wondering why you didn't get an email. It's this folk. Steve, we did have a question of, is it possible to request scores for submitted applications after we receive notice of select or non-select? Is this info available from prior years?
Is it possible to receive what? I didn't quite catch that.
The scores for applications that were reviewed previously or during a cycle, whether they were selected or non-selected?
You would need to submit an email, a letter requesting what you're actually requesting.
And I believe that's a public information request.
Right. So, I mean, the consensus scores are available, and then if you would like additional information, we may be able to provide that for that project. It depends upon the age of the project, especially on the non-selects in terms of the actual applications that were submitted in the paper format prior to the electronic. So what I would strongly encourage those that prepare applications, if you submit, to also make sure that you, as Rebecca went through, download for a record those that you submit. So the answer is yes, you can send us a request.
Thank you, Steve.
And we'll turn it over to our legal department if necessary for
Yep,
clarification.
I think there's a required response time. So we're always happy to help with that. We received another question, Steve. Is the expected municipal award date significantly different this year for any of the grant cycles compared to last year? It's going to be fairly similar. I think we made our earliest award in October and our latest award based off of the competitive cycles in late November. So I think it's going to be fairly similar. Unless, Steve, you know something I don't.
No, I don't know. Our expectations are such, and the actual date, hour, and minute, there is a notification process. So, and it will depend, of course, on the opportunities, whether they're batched by opportunity in terms of the actual applicants or whether they'll be by an opportunity go out. It also depends on the number of applicants received that pass the threshold test that move into the scoring round. We try to expedite if possible, but it does take a while to review depending upon the need to look at the narrative and what's in the narrative and comparative to what's asked to be submitted in the narrative, and then in comparison to other applicants. So thanks.
Thank you. Well, this concludes kind of the navigational tool structure of this. If you guys have any questions, additional questions, let us know. We're finishing fairly early. If you have other questions regarding other aspects of the program that we've discussed earlier this week, feel free to ask those now if you want. Otherwise, we do ask that if you have any issues with logging in or determining if your local unit of government has an account, to reach out to DED support and include Gina Deuce on that email, just so then we're aware of if there is an issue with logging information in. But you are able to start your application without getting access. You can always click download and see all the questions going on to gain access to everything. I believe that is about it. So just remember, if you are a consultant and you are being hired by a local unit of government, we want you to be an added user for that local unit of government's account for them to be submitting their application. So we want you underneath that local unit of government account. So, and if you have any questions navigating through that, Steve, is there an alternative for signatures on exhibits this year? DocuSign, for example, are we allowing DocuSign to be used by local units of government or another platform for the exhibits?
We'll take that into consideration and follow up. I don't know if the submission in terms of electronic signatures, in some cases, we definitely will accept dependent upon the individual situation in terms of that individual, whether or not they're able to actually sign with an original signature. So we'll come back with that.
I think this is a
response.
multi-level question for Liz. You would also need to see if the local unit of government allows electronic signatures for some of these forms that we are requiring them to sign, and what their policy procedures are. So if they have a policy that they need to have every thing go through city council, and that's their standard procedures, and they pass a resolution for them authorizing to sign a document, anything that comes up, then that would need to be the procedure followed in question. So we will get back to you on if we can allow it on our end, but it also needs to be a conversation with that local unit of government for their set process and procedures.
Rebecca, there has been progress in terms of contractual agreements, as far as the agreements with the subrecipient and such, as far as DocuSign. But as you say, that's also needs to be a means that that local unit of government can actually implement. 2022 will go to environmental review and a number of items that will allow for electronic signatures. So, I mean, we're moving in that direction. So we'll have to go back and find, and if we do, there'll be a need for that local unit of government to identify that they have whoever signs authorization to do such.
Great. So just to recap for everyone, Community Development Block Grant webpage, start with your 2022 CDBG application guidelines, identify your project, your service area, who you're benefiting, and what activity you want to do. Start out there and see which funding opportunity is the best fit for you. Once you have that determined, then you can reach out to our CDBG staff that oversee that opportunity and see if you're headed into the right direction, if this is the most appropriate funding source for you. Some projects are pretty straightforward. You want to do a brand new community center that's easily public works facilities. Others are a little bit more complicated because of the purpose of the facility in question. It could be tourism development, it could be public works. So some discussions may be needed. Take a look at your exhibits, exhibit A, B, C, D, all the way through here, and take a look at the AmpliFund application. Be aware of when local units of government host their city council meetings or their procedures for hosting a public hearing outside of the regular city council meeting or village meeting. That would be your key item. Our application due dates for these projects on our competitive cycle is BTR is due September 15th, planning is also September 15th, and then both of our public works are due September 1st. So please keep that in mind. We'll need to host that public hearing prior to submission of your application. That's a core federal regulation. We aren't able to waive that. So if a public hearing is not done prior to the application submission, you would not meet threshold. Take a look at open CDBG grants currently active for that local unit of government. If they've been previously awarded grants outside of tourism development, economic development, or youth job training, those need to be expended down to a certain level based off of when they were awarded in that. So if you're not really sure if the local unit of government has current active grants and a balance, feel free to email us. We can provide you a list of open grants and their balances. Happy to do that. I'm trying to think of anything else. Take a look at who has an account in AmpliFund for that local unit of government, and again, get that done early. And then also SAM.gov. You need to make sure that the local unit of government is active and registered in that, and then associated partners are also active and registered in that account, and sometimes that takes quite a bit of time to do. Steve, am I missing anything else for the recap?
I would recommend start early. In other words, with working with the local unit of government if you're submitting an application, or if you're a local unit of government. The public hearing requirement can place you in a dilemma if you're running short of time. And also, when it comes to signatures, originals, in a number of cases, documents are executed following the public hearing. So you would want to make sure that you have a number of those documents that can be executed by the chief elected official following the public hearing being held, because if there's no comments and everything's good to go, some of those can actually be executed at that time. Matching funds, make sure they understand what the match is. And if it's a project where, say, a child care development center, and it's a nonprofit, and where their money is coming from to finance that, and if it's not in the bank or in hand, it's somewhat difficult for us to do on your budget. When you put that together, there are a number of projects that sometimes the engineer or the architect fee is placed on the sideline and not part of the application, because there's already a contract entered into, and so we can't count that as match. We cannot reimburse that with CDBG money, but you can continue on. So if it's a USDA or some other agency funding, you want to make sure and talk to Aaron Boucher if it's a public works infrastructure or facility. So I would encourage you, if you're submitting an application or a community working on one, that you talk to us. Hopefully, if you've been planning, as maybe you weren't as successful the last round period or the one before, but you have a viable, in your view, application, please do talk to us. And then if you're doing income survey or looking at project service area under low moderate income area benefit, have a conversation with us. Or if you think your project fits and you want to make sure it's a good fit, we'll be willing to help you out and let you know if it's a yes or a no in terms of a submission for that opportunity. Those are just a few key points that I think might be helpful to you. Okay, Rebecca, you can close it out.
We did receive one more question. Someone asked if a DGR project from, guessing 2018, 2019 has funding still available for project costs. What is the threshold exactly due? So the process is, trying to sum, it's a very long question. If you have a 2019 DTR grant and you still have a balance remaining and you don't have 40% expended down yet, we are requesting that you submit a payment request drawdown to the agency through AmpliFund, and then we would need to have that approved prior to you submitting your application. So we are looking at that. We are taking a closer look. So if you are planning on submitting an application, make sure you're working closely with those CDBG program reps and letting them know, hey, this is going to have an impact on my 2022 application for whichever category you are applying for. But it is basically the date that we hit approve in the system by the staff member at DED. I also got a question on that percentage. I'm going to go to our part 2 application guidelines for applications and thresholds because I do not remember. So this is on project cost. So we I believe it's on project cost only, but Steve, I'll let you confirm that.
Yeah, we're dealing with the actual project costs so that you can look at that award. We have had in prior years, based upon thresholds, where a local unit of government was not moving a project and they wanted to apply, they requested that the project, the aged project, whether it was 17, 16, that we worked with them to terminate the grant so that they could submit another application. So if you have a project that's stagnant, not going anywhere, in terms of that grant, you may want to consider that if it's been sitting out there 3 years plus. But we would anticipate that you'd be drawing down admin dollars significantly, but it's
We'll make sure to put an FAQ together on this for all of you so you fully understand, and we'll include some examples on the situation, whether it's the 2018, 2019, or 2020. So it further clarifies that. We're hoping to have the recordings from these sessions up and available on our webpage next week, along with an FAQ. We'll send out an email notifying all of you once that is available. And as always, you guys can schedule a meeting with us if you want to discuss your potential projects or any issues that you're identifying as you're moving through the application process. Please keep us aware of items going on, because especially if in AmpliFund or with any of the forms, because it could have an impact on other applicants. So we would appreciate that communication. I think that concludes it for us, unless we received any questions. Okay. Great. I will conclude this meeting then at 3:51. Thank you guys for attending. Maybe